most of the companies I know are going to need money at some point. And the bottom line is this information that you have to prepare for an exit, 99% of it you're going to have to prepare for financing anyways. So you might as well get those ducks in a row because you're going to need it for the financing. That goes for just about anything from a one-pager, executive summary, share register, all that stuff has to be in order for a financing anyways. So if you're doing financings along the way and you're keeping that information up to date and you're actually keeping it in a cohesive manner, you've probably got 70% to 80% of what you already need for an exit put together anyways. So I'm a big believer in going out and figuring out really early on where your product fits, who the competitors are, and those competitors could very well be acquirers. So when you go to conferences and meetings and so forth, I make it a point to actually meet with those people, to go to the larger companies, to introduce what we do, to give them a look-see, but not too much of a look-see. Tell them what we're going to do, and then come back a year later and say, "See, this is what we've done." It's the same way you court an investor, you court a potential acquirer as well. If they're comfortable with you and they know you and you've said you're going to do X, Y, Z and you've done it along the way, you've got a lot better chance in having somebody on board in that company who's going to be a champion for you. And I guess that's one of the biggest things that I try and look for is when I talk to those other people, is there anybody who gets really excited about what we're doing? As excited as I am or even more excited. Because if I can twig into them and have a champion on the other side, you'll find they're the ones who are going to drive the process on the other side for actually doing an acquisition. So I'm a big believer in building those relationships and building them early on for multiple purposes, not just for an exit, but you've got to know what the other guys are doing, what their plans are as much as possible. You know, are they going to enter the space that you're in? Are they looking to do acquisitions in that space? And that helps you from a strategic intelligence standpoint with your product portfolio and how you're going to, any changes you're going to do to your product along the way as well. So I'm big on developing those relationships early on in the process.
So one of the big items that we see not being looked after properly has to do with your ownership of your company. Have you made commitments to people about options or equity? Founders often do this where they have people working with them on a sweat equity basis early on. They make promises, or at least someone thinks a promise was made to them, but maybe the founder doesn't. Don't do that. Make sure that if you are going to distribute ownership of your company, that you do it properly in writing and that it's handled so that there's no confusion at the end of the day. I would say that in at least 20-25% of the deals that we do, we find that when someone reads about the size of the exit, they make a phone call to someone and say, "What happened to those shares you promised me?" That should never happen. Another related item on the housekeeping side is unemployment. Make sure you have assignment of IP provisions with all your employees and your consultants. We've had deals where the buyers come along, they've looked through a consulting list, they've tried to match up, and they've found a consultant who left the company several years ago who didn't sign an assignment of IP provision, and they've made the company go out and get that before they'd close. Would have been an easy thing to look after at the outset. For those of you that are in the software business, open source. Make sure you have a policy and make sure you check with all your programmers and others that they enforce it and they use it properly. If you're unsure about whether you have open source in your code, get a scan done before you start a sale because any sophisticated buyer will make you do that. And then the final one is for those of you that contract generally, since most buyers are going to be looking to minimize their risk, be very careful about entering into contracts where you agree to indemnify the other party on an unlimited basis. And many standard form contracts have indemnity provisions, but you should be very careful about agreeing to an unlimited indemnity because again, from a buyer's perspective, they don't want to take a risk that is unquantifiable to them. So that would be another housekeeping matter I'd suggest you look after.